In Guilty Gear Strive right now, it seems to me like the risk-reward on strike-throw mix-up is extremely high, so I wanted to map out the options to try to mitigate this really common situation. If you guess wrong sometimes, you just die. For now, I want to focus on meterless options, as the amount of options with meter is a completely other issue. For the rest of the video, I'll be using damage values as shown here in these combos, but I don't want to show the combos every time, so yeah, here they are. I'll also be using Mei as the character since that's currently the character I'm using, and I feel like she has some pretty ridiculously strong options in this regard in terms of both damage and just potential. I also won't be showing reversals as part of the risk-reward calculation in this video, just so that I show options that every character can do defensively, outside of the damage, of course. So the first thing we notice when we look at it is if we do nothing, we get hit for about 220 damage on strike, and either 85 for a normal grab or 180 plus for a command throw. Let's see if we can do something about this. The most basic options I see people throw out are either to block, to jump the throw, to mash a jab, or to throw tech themselves. Let's see what happens. So first off, we've got blocking. That puts you in the pressure game, but at least there's opportunities for counterplay down the line. And of course, if they go for the throw, then you will eat the throw. If you jump on wake up and they meaty, you will die, but at least if they went for a throw, you get a pretty nice punish because of the long recovery on their throw whiff attempt. Jabbing on wake up also leads to you dying if they strike, but if they went for a throw, you get a jab confirm, which varies depending on the character. As for throwing on wake up, you also die if they strike, but at least if they went for a throw, you kind of return to a neutral situation. So far, looking at these numbers, jab and throw are like strictly inferior to jump for calling out the throw, and these numbers are looking very disadvantageous for the defender. Let's see if we can do something about this. If we think back to maybe another game you've played, Street Fighter V, a common option in that game was to delay throw tech. Let's see how that does. So first off, of course, if they strike, you block, and that leads to the same situation, so there's no advantage there. However, if they throw, you get the tech, and so that goes back to neutral. So overall, this looks like a strictly better option. So, taking inspiration once again from Street Fighter V, if we want to beat the late throw tech, we would use a shimmy of some sort. In this game, I feel like jumping and then doing a jump heavy seems like a pretty good option. There's other ways of doing it, such as backdash, or just walking back. But just to not overcomplicate things, let's just focus on the jump and see how that does against every other option that we've listed so far. If they go for the jump and you simply block, that lets you react and either air throw or anti-air them. But of course they can also air tag that throw or block it or air backdash away, and so it doesn't really give a player a clear advantage. Jumping on wake up also interacts with this in a weird way, where depending on the timing that they did their jump, you might be able to air throw them if you see their jump fast enough or whatnot. So once again, I think this situation doesn't really give a player a clear advantage. Same idea with whiffing a jab. It lets you maybe jump and air throw them, but it also depends on timing. And as for just throwing immediately, well, same thing happens since the throw recovery is huge in this game. You just die. If we look at the chart right now, we went from a 50-50 strike-throw situation to a three-way RPS situation, which is, of course, much better for the defender. But it's still not perfect, and I mean, I think these are the options that you'll see like most often at like I guess when playing opponents. However, there are some more options that we can delve into, and they might give you even more advantage as a defender. The option I'm talking about is, of course, fuzzy jump, which works great in games like this one where you have some throw-in vuln on wake up. I think in Guilty Gear it's 5 frames after wake up. First of all, let's look at fuzzy jump versus strike. You block on wake up, your jump input gets eaten, and you're in a disadvantaged situation, but you're not dead. Next, fuzzy jump against throw. Well, you jump the throw and you get a nice counter hit combo. Next, looking at jump versus fuzzy jump, since you are jumping a bit later, they're going to be falling after you, so it might make it a bit easier to air throw, but still overall no clear advantage there. Looking at the chart now, well, fuzzy jump is definitely a strong option, but it's not like the opponent doesn't have something they can do about it, so let's take a look at that. The option is of course to delay your meteor, which gives you a huge reward if they fuzzy jump, but let's see how it does against every other option we've looked at so far. Against block, it behaves the same as if you had just blocked anyway, so that's pretty good. Against an immediate jump, it kind of depends on the button that you're pressing and what your character's options are after. You might hit them, you might tag them, you might whiff and recover in time to air throw or anti-air them. As for a jab, well, it depends on the jab itself. You might trade, you might lose big time, you might win. Once again, situational. Against throw, well, you just throw them back in the corner, so that's pretty good. Finally, against late tech, it really depends on the timing at which you press your late tech. If you press it early enough, you might throw them. If you press it too late, you might get counter hit, since throws do have 2 frames of startup, so that one is kind of ambiguous, but depends on the situation. Sorry if I'm kind of glossing over all these ambiguities right now, but I'll clarify that a bit later in the video, so just hang on for now. If we look at the diagram now, there's a much more deep layer of interactions that can happen between the players. So of course the attacker is always still favored, but for them strikes is still like, you know, the safest option that they can do. So if you've shown them enough counterplay to their options and you cycle your options enough, you will make them maybe afraid of trying to take risks there, and that might favor you. However, I think there's still a bit something more that we can look at on the defender's options. I don't know if you've guessed it, but I'm of course talking about backdash. Let's see how that fares against everything. First up, strike, you get bodied. Next, throw. Well, you backdash a throw in, you get a nice counter hit combo. Against the shimmy, depending on timings, you should be able to block their jump in. Maybe anti-air, maybe air throw, not sure, so you might have to hold that. You might get advantage, it's kind of ambiguous. And against the delay strike, well, you just get bodied. Alright, let's look at the chart now. Well, backdash is pretty bad. It's just worse than fuzzy jump. Unless we were to combine the two concepts together. I'll get into why this is a new thing in this game, but first let's look at how it interacts with everything else we've seen so far. Blocking the strike seems like the best expected result anyway. Backdashing the throw lets you get a nice punish, as we've seen previously. Against the jump that is used to bait throws, because you're backdashing a bit later than the other backdash, you generally don't have time to anti-air or air throw. Generally have time to block, but not always, so it's also one of those more situational things. And if they delay strike, you just get bodied. Looking at the chart again, fuzzy jump and fuzzy backdash seem pretty close, but fuzzy jump seems slightly better. However, that doesn't tell the whole story. The option I've been using to represent the strike in these examples has been make close slash to down heavy, which combos the same way on airborne or grounded opponents. However, if you use something, for example, close slash 2D, then that won't combo on air hit, and so the risk reward there becomes a bit different. Another factor to consider is that if you mistime your jump as opposed to your backdash, the jump startup of 3 frames is vulnerable, whereas the backdash startup, I mean, you're just holding back before you press the button, so it's a less of a risk there, and the active frames on the move might also be different. For example, close slash has a lot of active frames, but 5p, for example, you can backdash through it. And to clear up a point about some of the interactions around the shimmy or throw bait situation giving neither player a clear advantage, it's partly because it'll vary kind of depending on the option that the attacker chose. I mentioned that there's other options besides jump, such as backdash, walk back, or air backdash. So here's what they look like. Backdash is throw invuln and puts them out of throw range. It even recovers fast enough that they can dash in for a punish afterwards. Walking back right outside of throw range can be a tricky thing to time, but if you can do it correctly, it also baits dragon punches. Air instant backdash into a jump normal isn't an option that's available to each character, but it's very strong because it's hard for the defender to react and anti-air correctly. Now there are a few things I want to clarify as to the specifics of why some of these options work if you're not familiar with them. So let's take a look at a timeline. of what happens when you get knocked down and what your opponent can do. So real quick, you'll notice that you're invuln on the frames that you're knocked down, or you might be OTG state or not. I'm not sure how that works in this game. But at the frame 0 in the middle there, you become strike vulnerable. And so I think I saw that the frame that you wake up in the 5 following frames, you're strike vulnerable, but throw invulnerable. And then I guess on the 6th frame onward, then you become fully vulnerable. So I'm basing it off of this logic, but the numbers might be slightly off. So now what you want to do with this strike vulnerable but throw invulnerable window on wake up is that's the window where you can time your inputs to do things that are going to lead you into a throw invulnerable state, but also that let you block on the first frame. So if they meaty immediately, you block, but then if they wait and do a throw, then you do your option that is going to beat the throw. Now, one thing to note is that the late tech input is probably the most lenient option here because there seems to be a bigger throw tech window than in previous Guilty Gears. I'm not sure exactly how big it is, but the idea here is that you would have this something like a 10 frame window to input it, because you could probably input it a bit later than that, but at that point you want to go back to down blocking so that you can block, let's say, if they chain to a 2D at that point. Next, if we are to compare fuzzy jump and fuzzy backdash, fuzzy backdash isn't really a thing in other games, and the reason why it exists in this game is because of the dash macro, which allows you to input your dash from one input without having to both input back twice and return to neutral. So that means that in other games, if you wanted to do this, this would both expose you to lows and also if you wanted to have it delayed, you would have to return to neutral at some point, and then that would expose you to just any form of strike, right? So by having it on a macro, you can do it at the same timing that you would do a fuzzy jump. However, once again, you will have to do this before the throw active frames. Myself, I might have gotten something wrong in this, especially on like the throw active frames or just the move active frames and how they interact with the up button or whatnot. So I might be like a frame off on these visuals, but hopefully that gives you guys an idea of what your options are and how to take maybe a bit less risk, like lower the risk reward on the strike throw mix up. And yeah, I hope it helps grow the tech around this game. And I don't think this is unhealthy for the game. I think this is actually better because it kind of there's still like really good options that you can do against it, and especially once meter gets involved. You know, with meter, all of this kind of gets thrown out the window, and things get even more explosive. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how this game develops, and for now I'm playing it. Yeah, so hope to see you guys online.